Before we get into the video, guys, I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone who's called. I've received well over 30 calls in 24 hours asking me questions about footy and the channel. Thank you so much for the support, guys. It's been really awesome. The character you see here is just an AI model. Be sure to stick around in the video to see if your question was answered. Please do keep sending them in. I'll try to get to all of them eventually. It's been really fun so far listening to some of your questions, so stick around and see if you made the very first video.
Hey mate, do you think Brodie Grundy will be at Melbourne next year? Cheers.
Like many others have said, I don't think you can have Max Gawn and Brodie Grundy at the same team. They're both probably first ruck, and you're not going to put either one of them in the second, I wouldn't imagine, and you're definitely not going to be paying them $750,000 to be the second ruck in your team. You'd go for someone a lot younger who you can train up and get for a good price. After saying that, I think Grundy will stay next year, but it wouldn't surprise me if he's pushed out the door for someone a little bit younger. They might be able to offload him to another team in a half-decent trade, but I just don't see him getting that sort of money anymore. He hasn't been performing very well this year. He cannot stick a mark. He cannot kick a goal. So for me, I think Grundy's got to go.
Mum, Noah, who's your favourite footy player?
Well, hi Noah, and thank you for calling in. I do appreciate that. Probably one of my favourite players when I was growing up. I am quite a bit older than a majority of my viewers, but for me that was Andrew McLeod. I just loved the way he ran. He was always awesome to watch, and I do have a signed Guernsey from him, so he always holds a little bit of a close place in my heart. Current players, there's probably quite a few. It's very hard to go past Nick Dacos. He's so exciting to watch. The way he plays footy is awesome. But I do love the running backs. Someone like Nick Blakey is really cool to watch. I just love it when the defenders can take that run, create plays. They could be the next sort of big playmakers, in my opinion.
Okay, genuine question. If you had to choose between Max Gawn and Brodie Grundy, which one is your father-in-law and which one is your brother-in-law? Very serious question.
And a very serious question deserves a very serious answer, if you know what I mean. I think I would put Brodie Grundy as the father-in-law. He just seems like he's a little bit too much into his lattes, a little bit boring in my opinion. I don't know the guy from a bar of soap, but Max Gawn just seems very relaxed. He seems like he doesn't mind a beer, especially at the footy. That's probably what you want in a brother-in-law. Someone that you can just hang out with, and it's not a drag when you got to see him. I think Max Gawn just seems like a little bit more of a fun sort of guy. He wouldn't mind getting on the beers. So for me, that's what I would pick.
Hey mate, love the channel. Just had a quick question for you. Do you reckon the game is now a bit faster as you see more small and like nimble players dominate, like Dacos, Butters and Gordon, compared to like a few years ago when it was more Danger, Cripps and Wines? Cheers mate.
Yeah, that's quite an interesting question actually, because if you do have a look at the most recent Brownlow medalists, obviously a midfielder's sort of medal there. You've got players like Paddy Cripps, Ollie Wines, Lachie Neale, Nat Fyfe, Tom Mitchell, Dusty Martin, Patrick Dangerfield, Nat Fyfe again. As you can see, most of those are pretty big-bodied midfielders, except for maybe Lachie Neale and Tom Mitchell. Lachie Neale was 177 centimetres and 84 kilos apparently. In the AFL, that is probably considered fairly small, but it is good to see these smaller players sort of get a bit more of a role in footy. One thing that they have to be aware of and be better at is kicking and handballing skills. Unlike forwards or defenders who can sort of rely on their height, or even rucks as well, they can rely on their height and just sheer physical size to outbody opponents. A smaller player like Nick Dacos, Caleb Daniel, their skills just have to be better. If their skills aren't better, they'll get shown up more because they just cannot physically contest the ball because they'll most likely get hurt. So their actual skill has to be a lot better. And I think that's something that you can sort of see in those players, and Golden as well, is where their handballing and their kicking is top tier. They're all elite. And one thing as well is they just seem to show up every time at every contest. They just have to be persistent. They cannot go missing in games, otherwise they will get dropped, in my opinion, due to their smaller size. Great question.
Firstly, what is wrong with the Crows? Secondly, top 5 Adelaide Crows players.
I'll answer this in two parts, but I think the Crows were never going to make finals. I think right at the start of the season, everyone said Crows were going to be a bottom 4 side, which I definitely laughed at. I said there's no way they'll be a bottom 4 side. I didn't see them pushing for finals, but I saw them fairly close, and I think that's probably where they'll end, is around that 10 to 12 spot. I think that's probably pretty reflective on their season. They can't be a flat track bully. They can't just rely on winning games at home in Adelaide. They have to be able to travel to the MCG and Optus Stadium and so on to be able to beat the better teams. They can't just rely on the home ground advantage and the umpires to bail them out. I think they'll have a better shot at it next year. I think they've done a lot better than most people's expectations, and I'm not sure why they're sort of getting grilled for it, because they were never going to make finals this year, in my opinion. And I'll give you 3 players that I really like watching at the Crows. Sam Berry is a really good player. I think he doesn't get enough credit for what he does. He's an absolute workhorse and he is a tackling machine. You love to see it. Minus last weekend, I think Josh Rochelle is a really exciting player to watch as well. And lastly, Brodie Smith. He's just got a massive leg and he's really fun to watch. Thanks for the questions.
Hi, do you reckon Giants will ever make the grand final?
Hey, and thank you for calling in with your question. GWS actually played in the 2019 AFL Grand Final. Most people would forget it because it was quite boring. It was very much one-sided. I do see GWS making finals again. They've got a lot of money and the AFL are supporting them massively with draft picks and everything. So yes, I think they will make finals again, but it probably won't be in the next 5 years, in my opinion.
Hey mate, love your videos, mate. Keep it up. But would love to hear about your thoughts on how Geelong's going at the moment. Get all these media sort of coming out and saying, oh, they're back, oh, they slump. Would like to know your opinion on how the rest of their season sort of spends out, still do well in the finals. Cheers, mate.
Hey, thanks for calling in. I think Geelong are actually starting to win games at the right point. If you look at another team like the St Kilda, they won 6 of their first 6 games. They were 6-0. They were top of the ladder for quite a few weeks, but then they started losing games and they're super inconsistent, and now's not the time to be inconsistent. Whereas I think Geelong, on the other hand, are sort of starting to put those games together where they are playing some good footy. They are playing as a team and they're putting together some good scores, so now is the time to do it, more so towards the end of the season when you start to get into the crunch time. But I think Geelong are starting to pretty much fire on all cylinders. So I do see them making finals. I think I've got them around the 5th or 6th spot. I'll chuck that on the screen now. And overall, I think they do make finals. They go through maybe 1 or 2 weeks, but I think they get knocked out in the end. It's very hard to win the grand final outside the top 4. And I don't think Geelong are going to do it this year. But I do see them making finals and being in there for at least 1 week.
Do you think Carlton will make finals the way that we're going now?
Again, yes, thank you for the question, first of all. And yes, I do see Carlton making the finals. I think they will probably get in around that 7th or 8th spot. They do have quite a few games that they need to win. I've got them winning 13 games. As the commentators said, you probably need to be winning that 12 or 13 games to be making finals. I'm not sure about GWS, Sydney, Richmond. I guess all the way down to Essendon can technically make it. It's just that one game between them and GWS. But I do see Carlton, they're very similar to Geelong, where they're starting to win these games. They're starting to put these games together and actually playing well for once. So coming to the end of the season, the crunch time, I think Carlton will continue to win games. They've got some very hard games coming up, but I still think they can make the finals, and I reckon they'll end up around that 7th or 8th spot. They might get through against the Dogs, possibly. I do have them going through the first week and then facing Port Adelaide in Adelaide, and I think they will lose there.
Who do you think's going to win the 2023 grand final and how much by? I reckon it'll be Port by 13 against Collingwood.
Thanks for the question. I actually have in the grand final, I have Collingwood versus Brisbane Lions. Obviously going to be at the MCG. The Magpies at the moment are just too good for any other team in the competition, in my opinion. And I think they'll absolutely run over any team at the moment, hoping that they'll have a full list. I think they will win comfortably by 20 plus points. And that's it for the very first episode of the Talkback Radio, the Talkback Call Show. Thank you so much for calling in. Please do continue to call. I'm going to try and do at least one of these a week. So if you have any burning questions, please do call the number on the screen now. And hopefully you make it into next week's episode. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.